Come April 2021, your salary structure is going to undergo a big change. Usually it changes for most people because that's the time when appraisals happen, but this time it's going to change for another reason. Wage Code 2019 passed in Parliament. Now, what exactly is it? What is it going to do to your overall salary structure? Is it good for you? How are the corporates viewing this new change that's going to come into place? All that is something that we are going to discuss in India Revival Mission this weekend on Times Network. Joining us on the broadcast right now is R. Jagannathan, who is Editorial Director Swarajya, Prince Augustine, who is EVP Group Human Capital and Leadership Development, Mahindra & Mahindra. We have with us Dr. Rahul Sapkal, who is Assistant Professor, Center for Labour Studies, School of Management and Labour Studies, TISS. We also have with us Sabina Devan, Founder and Executive Director, Just Jobs Network. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here on India Revival Mission. Let's begin the discussion with Mr. R. Jagannathan. What does this new wage code really mean for the people of this country?
I think term wages as defined envisages all remuneration provided to the employee. And so I think there is going to be significant changes in the way what a wage is defined, how perquisites are defined, and other things. So the specifics of it, I will not go into right now, but I think it will bring clarity to the understanding of what you get in terms of the wages that currently you have something called a CPC, but what you get in your hand is something quite different. So that basic things have been changed in the wage code. The actual rules under which this will be done have not yet probably been notified, but there will be quite significant changes, not at the top line level, but at the level of what you actually get in hand. So many of these things will actually change because of that.
Okay. Sabina Devan, why don't you help us understand, as Mr. R. Jagannathan also mentioned, that it's going to eventually change what we get from the ATM, what we take home, because our PF component is expected to go up.
Well, I think that there's a lot of conjecture right now, and I think the important place to start, Hina, is the recognition that in a 2018 study by the ILO, we know that India has some of the lowest wages, the highest wage inequality, a high level of working poverty, and a very high gender pay gap. So, the important thing here is to recognize that the wage law in India is normative rather than prescriptive. And what I mean by that is that this code is, and the associated rules are a guidance. They're not really enforceable. So we still need to, it remains to be seen whether it actually translates into anything significant in terms of our actual paychecks. But to the extent that we actually do enforce the labor codes and some of the good provisions within them, I think it's a really positive step, because when people have more savings, when they have more wages, higher income, they spend more, and that has a positive loop in the economy. When they spend more, then businesses produce more. So, if that indeed, if we enforce these codes, and particularly if to the extent that the wage code is enforceable, then that's actually a very good thing. We might, if we do actually see changes in our pay stubs, that's actually a very good thing, although I'm skeptical about the enforcement.
Okay. Mr. Augustine, how do you view this? How is the corporate sector really looking at this new change that's going to come? Is that going to lead to a big rejig in the overall CTC structure?
Yeah, see, if you look at how wages got administered in India, I would say that, when you look at a person's salary, there is something which he takes home, there is something which he pays to the government by way of taxes, and there is something which is in terms of savings, which is his provident fund and gratuity. So what this new definition of wage is done, it has created a deemed fictional portion as to what can form basic wages. Because there was no guideline, people had even 10% of their overall salary as basic wages, and the contribution to retirement funds, etc., was very low. So what I see positive about it is that the contribution to retirement funds, there would be adequate savings. Therefore, it is not that because we are a consumption economy, we spend everything today. You must have reasonable savings for in times of crisis, or when you retire, etc. So that is something very positive about it. Second is for an employee, definitely because of the policy approach to the whole concept of wages, bringing it uniform, standardization, the whole thing, there would be a net take-home impact for the employees. But people should look at their net salary and plus what is going into their savings. So therefore, people have not looked at savings as a means for long term. So this is what the wage code has really brought about. It has brought about uniformity. So people who, for Provident Fund, I don't see any implication, because para 26(6) of the EPF scheme has provided that where a person crosses the statutory limit, it is for the employer and employee to decide what is the contribution that has to be made. With respect to gratuity, yes, there could be an impact, and therefore there would be a valuation impact that would come. With respect to leave encashment, there would definitely is going to be an impact which is going to happen for corporates. Therefore, I would say that this is the new change that we have got to get used to. Therefore, it has got both positives as well as negatives. But overall, I would say it is definitely a move in the right direction.
Okay, so you believe it's the move in the right direction. Before I go across to Dr. Sapkal, let's explain to our viewers, as Mr. Augustine was also telling us, that how our wage structure or CTC structure currently looks like and how it could really change. So for example, if you are earning 10,000 rupees per month, is just an example that I'm giving you, there is a component called as a basic pay, and then there is a component called as a dearness allowance, and then there are other kind of allowances, special allowance that you get, wardrobe allowance, transport allowance, and many other such components are there. Then there is PF component, gratuity, and all those. They come in the other components. So if you're earning say 10,000 rupees per month, out of which if your basic is 3,500 rupees, your DA is about 1,000 rupees, and your other components are about 5,500 rupees, then this entire structure is going to change. That is something that the new wage code is going to bring from April 2021. Now, why is it going to change? Because under the new law, the 50% of your CTC has to be basic pay. So it means that if you're earning 10,000 rupees as the CTC, then at least 50%, that is 5,000, has to be your basic pay. As a result, your PF contribution is going to change. Your employer will have to give you more in terms of gratuity, but your overall CTC is going to remain as it is. So what you're getting monthly might reduce, but what you're saving for your future can actually go up. Dr. Rahul Sapkal, what is your point of view? Is this change good for the employees?
No, this is not good for the employee, because if you look into the corporate structure also, like when the code has been drafted and it has been promulgated, it has the four aspect of the labor code. So payment of wages act, minimum wage act, payment of bonus act, and this has been drafted historically through the various labor struggles. Like for instance, payment of bonus act. Now bonus is very cash component, especially given to the seasonal industry. Does the wage code really talk about the seasonality of the industry? Like I come from the city of Bombay, where the textile mill was there, and in the textile mill, the bonus used to be the big thumb, during the Diwali and during the Dashera used to be the given as that. Does the code talk about the bonus pay? No, it doesn't talk about that. How the code is going to be a beneficiary for the worker? In the appeal, if you look into the section 2 of the code, it talks about the key universality of the minimum wages. But the code is actually confusing two things. It talks about the minimum rate of the wages and minimum wages. Minimum rate of a wages is different than the minimum wages, because minimum wages is a statutory provision and minimum rate of a wages is a different thing, because it is a conditional one. Like for instance, if you in the corporate, if you are let's say in the housekeeping guy, if you are the back office guy, minimum wage rate differs from the one task to another task because it has a skill component. But minimum wages is applicable to everyone, because below that no employer is going to offer that wages. Does the code really explicitly talk about this? No, it doesn't talk about this. And that's why it is really worrisome, because covertly it is going to create a wage inequality within the corporate sector, within the organized manufacturing sector. And that's my worrisome, which will create a huge income inequality within the society. And we are going to push the worker at the margin. Though it appears that, okay, the de facto code appears to be very good, but in the de jure, the facts which is there in the black letter laws, I'm really not convinced that how it is going to be beneficial.
Okay, Mr. R. Jagannathan, will you like to respond to this argument of Dr. Sapkal that it's going to actually create some kind of income inequality?
No, I don't think it will do any such thing, because why should it do so? So basically what this new structure does is shift part of the cost to the company from the take home to social security, which is say PF and gratuity. Gratuity particularly, it goes up, right? So the worker is actually encouraged to save more instead of spending more. So if you have a 25,000 salary and 50% of that has to be the basis on which has to be, say, your basic pay, then your gratuity and other things will automatically go up. So it basically shifts the cost from just wages, current wages, to future earnings, which is post-retirement benefits, all those things. So I think it is good from a social security point of view. It might even marginally impact your short-term take-home pay. But my guess is that most employers will protect take-home and add to their social security costs separately. Because gratuity, after all, is payable only if you serve 5 years. And if people are going to be moving in and out of jobs frequently, gratuity often is not payable. So I think it's by and large, on balance, I would say it's good.
But Prince Augustine, now then the other question is that, if your basic salary structure with respect to your basic pay changes, like I was explaining with an example earlier, it has to be 50% of your CTC and your PF amount is calculated on the basis of your basic pay. So that contribution will go up. Won't it be a strain on the employer as well then?
See, it will be a strain on the employer, but it will be a marginal strain. If you look at the Supreme Court judgment of 2018, right, where they said that, you must bring some structure into your whole approach to basic wage. You can't have abysmally low basic wages. There are some employers who have kept 10% of your total salary is basic wage. You sometimes, even your minimum wage, where there's a basic structure, that is not followed, So therefore, it has created a uniformity as to what can form basic wages, because your basic wages has to be respectable. Therefore, to that extent, even I had recommended this, that of your CTC, 50% should actually form part of basic wages. But probably what the government could have done is they should have kept a limit. So, that we have got all types of CTCs which are existing in the market today. Under the PF, the minimum wage payable is 15,000 rupees. That's a coverage under the Provident Fund. Therefore, 50% of 15,000 was a reasonable thing. But if you are assuming getting 10 lakh salary, telling that 50% should be basic is a little unreasonable, is what I find. In fact, the code has provided for that the government can notify a percentage. So probably it may be wise to make it 75% of your wages, subject to you not being less than the wages which is prescribed under the respective act. So that makes it a win-win, both for the employee who is at a low wage level and for the employee who is at a higher wage level. Because at a higher wage level, he will look at the net take-home pay. Right, and therefore, if you have a very high basic salary, it will affect the employer also, because the gratuity valuation goes very high. What you negotiate with the employer is on the concept of CTC, where the cost of gratuity is inbuilt. Therefore, suddenly for a period of 1 or 2 years, it will create an imbalance. But over a period of time, it will settle. And I do not agree that it will create any wage inequity. What the government has done, I fully support the government in this thing. You will have a national minimum wage. And each state government will have to ensure that there are 4 skill levels. For each skill level, they have got a national minimum wage. And states they can give a minimum wage which is higher than that. Therefore, to that extent, you are bringing equity of employment. you're bringing equity in the way people get remunerated. Therefore, it will not create any imbalance at all. In fact, the Equal Remuneration Act also provides that there should be no discrimination, right? So, therefore, overall, the positives outweigh the negative side of the whole thing. So, and the government is actually taking feedback from employers, employees, etc., as to what they can do to ensure that it is palatable and lands well on everybody.
Let's take a quick reaction from Dr. Sapkal as well, then I'll go across to Sabina Devan. Yes, Dr. Sapkal, have you got your concerns clarified now?
I think points raised by my co-panelist, I disagree with that point, because if you look into the periodic labor force survey, only 13% of the regular work who draws the salary receives the social security. Remaining 87% are completely at the mercy of the market, who falls under the casual workers, unorganized sector. And here the basic question comes: will that code is going to give a justice to this kind of this category of a worker? I don't think so, because one of my co-panelists rightly pointed out that this code envisaged to have one wage, one market, and everything. So everything is one. It is not like that, because labor is in the concurrent lead. Both center and state join these restrictions. State government have a major role to play. And so far what has been happening in the minimum wages, skilled, unskilled workforce has not been actually revised many period of time. There are scheduled industries which actually been treated differently. Now what is happening? They are going to create a minimum force. Let me give the one point. Anup Satyapati committee, which was formed by the present dispensation a couple of years back, they submitted a very nice report, and they submitted that 376 rupees per day should be a minimum wage, should be fixed. What has happened? The moment the report is out, the report has not been accepted by the Ministry of Labour and Employment, and then the centralization of power has really created a lot of problems.
Okay, that's your point of view. Let me now go across to Sabina Devan as well. Now, Ms. Devan, the question that many are asking is that while on one hand our take home could go down, but eventually the CTC remains as it is, because more money will be going for our future as our social security, as our PF or gratuity component. But is it the right time for something like this? Because already we are in the middle of coronavirus pandemic, and many companies have given pay cuts as well.
Right. So I think that's a really important question. I mean, the first point I want to make is that I agree with some of the panelists that the harmonization and simplification of the labor laws into 4 codes and the wage code has been a very positive step. But as Professor Sakpal just noted, the law only benefits about 50% of our workforce. And it says very little about certain categories of workers like domestic workers or gig workers. And just to add another statistic to the mix, 71% of our regular wage workers don't even have a written contract. And so once again, I come back to this question of, it's very well and good to have a wage code on paper, and even there's big gaps. The rules don't outline the exact criteria and methods for fixation of a floor wage, only broad categories of food and clothing. The wage code says, and the rules don't say anything about how often it will be revised. So if there's volatility, if there's inflation, we actually have no idea how often it will be revised. And so when we're looking at the whole picture, the code itself does very little to actually change the fabric of and the growing inequality in our economy. I think that this is fundamental, and there's no getting away from that. The purpose of this code is to create a more equitable playing field, and it does not do that. And PF and ESI are extremely expensive programs to even manage, right? So when we talk about, we want people to have retirement, we want people to have basic Social Security benefits, but we should really be talking about a government system that is a public system that's instituted in an iterative way towards some kind of a universal system. And I think, while ESI and PS benefits are really important, they only apply to less than 50% of our workforce, which is, the share of formal workforce is actually very small, but this code only applies to 50% of our workforce, which are waged workers. And so, let's just keep this in perspective. When we talk about formal workers, we're really talking about less than 8%. So, we have to be very clear about the impact that this is going to have on the economy.
Okay, I give you the last word, Mr. R. Jagannathan. How would you like to respond to what Ms. Devan has raised?
I think there are some shortcomings. Nobody needs to deny that. But we must look at the larger picture. What is the larger picture? We have had several decades of very low jobs growth. Okay. So if you do not, we should have reformed these laws in 1991 when we opened up the economy for by abolishing industrial licensing and other things. We opened up, reduced capital controls, but we did not do reforms in labor and land markets. That is other factor, and even agriculture. So we kept some parts of the economy totally tied to the old control and command and control side. So you have to free labor, make it more flexible. Don't forget, we think that, this is all hire and fire and all things happening. Don't forget that IBC preceded the labor code, which means management itself can be chucked out for running a company badly, right? So many companies from, one Ambani, one Ruiyas, one JPs, one GVK, all of them have lost profitable companies. So exit policy for management has preceded labor. So this new labor codes actually move the thing in the right direction by simplifying laws. They will formalize to some extent some existing labor force with better social security. But there is also preparation for a gig economy because a flexible labor market is needed for a flexible product market. And today demand is changing so dramatically that no company can give lifetime employment or permanent labor benefits. So if you want to increase jobs, this freedom is absolutely necessary.
All right. I think you have addressed some of the key concerns. Of course, there are many issues that still need to be highlighted and they still need attention, especially the informal sector in the country and how to bring that also into the formal sector. That's something that remains to be fixed, and we'll see what steps government takes from here on to address some of the concerns raised by our panelists. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here on India Revival Mission on Times Network.